Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and today I am sharing with you 20 of my absolute favorite Halloween DIYs that I have made over the years. Next week, I'm gonna have a brand new video with 13 new Halloween DIYs for you, but while I am hard at work still on that video this week, I wanted to show you some of my faves from the past. So we're gonna start off with this Raven DIY. Ravens just remind me of Edgar Allan Poe. I think this is really supposed to be more like a crow, but I'm calling it a raven. So this is a really easy DIY to do. I picked up the bird from the gardening section of the Dollar Tree, but I think they even have these out for Halloween. But if they don't have the black birds for Halloween, you could just get any color bird and spray paint it black. For this raven apothecary piece, I took a candlestick and one of the gold wire wreath forms from Dollar Tree and painted them both black. This one's a little harder to see, but I'm taking Spanish moss, which can be found in the gardening section of the Dollar Tree, and placing that where the candlestick and my wreath hoop meet. That is going to be our bird's nest. I think it's a crow, but I'm going with raven in my mind. I found these. They were 2 clip-on birds on a pack on one of the Dollar Tree end caps, and I placed him right in the center. I was about to say this is another quick and easy DIY, but I'm gonna have to say that for every single DIY, so I need to come up with some different adjectives here. But this was a simple one. It looks a little complex with the spider's web, but it's actually not. I took one of the vases from Dollar Tree and painted that black. I didn't make it opaque or anything. I just wanted to get one layer down so it was a little bit easier when I went in with my hot glue. Next, I grabbed my chalk pen and I'm just drawing out what I want my spider web to be, kind of doing like all the different lines, almost looks like glasses cracked, and then you go in, put a circle on the inside and just start connecting your web. So I went around doing this. You don't need a chalk pen. You could use a pencil, marker, really whatever you want, because we're going to end up covering this with black paint. So you won't be able to see any of this writing anyway. Similar to how I did the candy apples I said candy apples, they definitely were not, they were poison apples. Don't listen to me, they were not candy apples. My poison apples in my latest Halloween video, I'll link that above if you want to check it out. I'm just going over everything that I have drawn out with the chalk over with hot glue and waiting until that is completely dry. Then once I made sure it was all dry, I went over it again with black paint. I like to add a little bit of Mod Podge to my black paint whenever I'm working with a glass surface. Sometimes it's hard for paint to go on glass, so just adding that Mod Podge really makes it stick and just adhere to everything a little bit better. To make the spider web stand out from the black background, I went in with this gray color. It's called Elephant by Waverly. It's one of my favorite dark grays. And I went in with a dry brush, just added a tiny bit. See, I got a little bit too much on there. And it just went over the spider web that kind of cast it a little bit more of a highlighted look to our vase. You could always fill this with flowers. If I had some black roses, that would have been perfect, but I didn't. So I just put a candle down in there and lit that. If you watched last week's video, then you will know that I made this really spooky skull head and hands that looks like it's coming out of a mirror or a picture frame. So this is kind of the smaller scale, a little bit friendlier version of that DIY. I'll place a picture of it up here. So for this one, you're gonna need a clay pot. I got mine, I think in a 2-pack from Dollar Tree, and I painted it black before placing a little bit of floral foam. Then I took a skeleton hand and I painted it in a gold metallic color and hot glued it to a bamboo skewer. So then I was able to stick it down in that floral foam and position it how I wanted in my clay pot. I want it to look like it's coming up out of the grave. So I placed that a little bit more towards the front, and I forgot to hot glue the floral foam down, so I did that. For the tombstone, I really like these metal tags from the Dollar Tree. This one that has the rounded top just looks so much like a tombstone to me, so it was a no-brainer. But to cover where the hole is at the top where you would thread some jute through, I took a rub-on transfer from, of course, the Dollar Tree. This one had a ghost on it, and I just transferred that down onto our faux tombstone. The last step in this DIY is adding some hot glue and Spanish moss all around the Tombstone tag and our zombie hand that's coming up out of the earth. I chose to go with this brown Spanish moss so it looked like the dirt was kind of old and dried for the season, but you could also do it a fun green color. Dollar Tree has tons of different moss. They have the green, the reindeer moss, the Spanish moss, so yeah, you can use whichever one you think fits best. Okay, I might have spared you from saying quick and easy too much, but I will say that this was the easiest DIY in the entire video, but I think it's so cute and something that you can add to your regular home decor for the Halloween season. I have candlesticks up year-round on my fireplace, but for Halloween, I thought it'd be really fun to add little ghost faces onto them. It's a very subtle touch. If you're really not into the Halloween decor, I think this is a cute way to incorporate just a tiny bit of it. Someone might not even notice it at first glance, and then maybe when they're looking a little bit harder, they'll realize, oh, those candles have little ghost faces. I just use black paint. I don't light my candles, or if I do, it's only for a picture, a very short amount of time. These are really just for decor. So if this did drip down, it would probably ruin the ghost faces. But again, I'm just using this for decor, so just using some plain black paint works for me. Next up is probably my favorite DIY in the whole bunch. I've had this idea for a few months now and finally acted upon it. I have a couple of the wood birdhouses in my craft stash, and I've used them for pretty DIYs like a birdhouse in the spring, but I thought how cool would it be if we turned it into more of a haunted house. So first step was painting the entire birdhouse black, and then I wanted to add a bat coming out of the top of the birdhouse, so I grabbed some silver, just wire that I had, and I bent that in just kind of a twisted formation, and then I'm going to be adding the bat on in just a little bit once that glue is dry. I wanted a pumpkin for the front of our haunted house. I thought one of the wood apples that I painted orange would work, but it was a little bit too big, so I just popped off one of the styrofoam pumpkins that came in these fall harvest trucks. For the bat, I took a bat ring that came in a huge pack from the Dollar Tree and just cut the bat off of the ring section and hot glued that on to the top of our metal wire. Using one of my paint pens, I wrote out "Beware." Usually I would use my Cricut, a nice cutting machine to have pretty lettering, but for a haunted house, I figured it would not be very nice handwriting, so I could go ahead and do it. On one of the sides of the house, I thought it was looking a little empty, so it had to be a haunted house, so I went back to those rub-on transfers and took a larger ghost and placed that on the side of our haunted house. I really wanted a ghost to be popping out of one of the birdhouse windows, but all of the wood ghosts that I had were too big. I tried to do a skull ring and that didn't really work, so I figured I would go with a shuttered up house. So to make those planks or boards, for the shutters, I just took one of the bamboo skewers that are in the kitchen section of Dollar Tree, and I just cut them into small pieces and then hot glued those across the openings of our birdhouse. You can't see it too well here, but I went in with some Spanish moss and just placed that around the front and kind of crawling up the sides of our haunted house. Of course, wanted it to look very overgrown, like no one's been there in a while, and the weeds and everything are growing around there, so I just used some hot glue to keep all of that in place. Back to our shutters. Now that the hot glue was all dried, I went in with a dark brown paint, my favorite one, Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel, and painted over the natural bamboo wood shutters. Last step, I did take a little bit of that gray elephant paint by Waverly and just distressed the whole haunted house to make it look even older, and this is how everything turned out. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below if you have ever done a DIY haunted house. I've seen people take the doll houses from Dollar Tree and spray paint them black and add lots of fun additions to them, so maybe that will have to be something that I try for next Halloween. I am a big fan lately of crafting faux sweets, so when I saw some real chocolate-covered marshmallows on Instagram, I wanted to DIY them, but using clay marshmallows instead of the real thing. To start off this DIY, we're going to be using these Crayola Model Magic. I got these at Walmart in the children's craft section. They worked really well. I used them last year for my little Halloween spooky cute ghost village. And for one marshmallow, I used almost an entire packet. I had a little bit left over that I'm going to save. They're the perfect size for smaller marshmallows. I made some smaller marshmallow snowmen last year for Christmas, so I am no stranger to the marshmallow game. Well, the fake marshmallow game. It's really easy. You're just going to grab your chunk of clay, roll it kind of into a cylinder shape, and then just start flattening out the top and the bottom. It all depends on how you want your marshmallows to look. They could be longer, skinnier, shorter, chunkier. I just went for a medium-sized marshmallow and pretty basic, in length and in how wide I wanted it. I let those dry overnight before I moved on to decorating them to make them look like they were actually dipped in chocolate. I took some brown paint, my favorite one, Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel, and covered them entirely in this, again, so it would look like they were covered in chocolate. Next, I wanted to make a dark chocolate drizzle on these, and I didn't have any more of the piping bags from Dollar Tree, so I just went with a Ziploc bag. I made a little hole in it with a thumbtack and then filled it with black paint, and then went ahead and just drizzled it on as if I was actually drizzling on some chocolate from a piping bag. Next, I took some sprinkles, started off with some orange, just sugar crystals, and then went in with my darker orange jimmies to decorate these. Last step was adding on my ghost. To do this, you really have to make sure that the faux marshmallows are completely dry from that chocolate drizzle, otherwise everything is going to run together. I went in with a smaller paintbrush and my white paint to make the ghost shapes, added little arms, and kind of had them going in a little bit of different directions. And then once the white paint was fully dry, I went in with my dotting tool and some black paint to draw on the mouths and the eyes of our little ghosts. To finish this off, I placed it in one of the Dollar Tree coffins and placed a little bit of spider fabric in there too. I hadn't made a wreath for the Halloween season yet, so using some new supplies and something that I had from last year, I decided to put the two of them together to make this spider web wreath that I think will look great on my front door for the month of October. First off, I had this boo sign. It's a wood cutout that the Dollar Tree sells from last year, so I decided to use it again, but I painted it entirely with black paint. And then for the bee and for the exclamation point on the boo, I wanted to add this spider web fabric that I got at Dollar Tree. I love it. The only bad thing is it's super glittery and the glitter gets absolutely everywhere, which is frustrating, but it's really pretty, so I sucked it up and wanted to use it. So I adhered this down using some Mod Podge, and then I also, once I had everything laid down, put a little bit more Mod Podge over the top of it, and then I left this overnight. I did it later in the night, so I just left it until the next morning when I knew it would be completely dried. I absolutely love the way that it came out when it was dried. I used the glossy Mod Podge, so there was a nice sheen to it. And then with all of the excess fabric, I just grabbed my medium-sized scissors and cut all around so that we didn't have any of that excess. The only slightly hard part was getting in the spaces on the bee, but I was able to get those out too. So after I had finished all of that, cut off all the excess, I moved on to making the spiders. So the O's are going to be our spider's body. And first up, before I even started on the legs, I started hot gluing down the eyes. I got this big pack of googly eyes from Dollar Tree, so I just hot glued those onto the O's. I wanted to use black pipe cleaners for the spider's legs, but I didn't have any, so I went with red because I thought that kind of went with the, Halloween poison vibe. And I actually love how the red ended up looking since I placed the boo sign on top of the black spider web. And no, I did not paint the back of the boo sign because I'm putting this on my front door and I was scared that the black paint might rub off on my front door. So I left that blank, and then I just bended the pipe cleaners kind of like in a V form, or I guess an upside down check mark, to make the spider's legs and hot glued those on. So I really did like the red, but I wanted a little bit of black. I love distressing pretty much every DIY I do, so I figured I would distress the spider legs too. So to add a little bit of shading, I did add some black on to the top part of the spider legs. For this video, I tried to do DIYs that I haven't really ventured in before, so we have quite a few witch DIYs, some different accessories. We got spell books and hats and even a witch herself. So this was really fun to do. I've never done anything like it, and we're gonna start off with this DIY witch's hat, and it's from a pretty unlikely supply. It's an orange cone from the Dollar Tree. They come 2 in a pack. Also, if you didn't want to make a witch's hat, I think a candy corn would be really cute, but I already did that a little bit earlier in the season with a foam cone, so I didn't want to repeat any DIYs, but I'll make sure to pop that up on the screen. That would be another great DIY. I painted the bottom area and the top section of our cone with some black paint. The reason why I left the middle orange is because you're not going to see it anyway because I'm going to be covering it. If you don't have cardstock that's brown like me, some craft paper from the Dollar Tree would work great. I, of course, could not find any in my Dollar Tree when I needed it, so I went with this scrapbooking paper. And to give it that weathered look like it was a page torn out of a book, I did rip the edges and kind of made it look a little bit more weathered. I also made this Black Hat Society SVG. It was something that I already found in Cricut Design Space. I'll have the link down below if you're a Cricut user. If not, you can print something out and Mod Podge it on. And of course, because I want to make this look like it is distressed, I'm taking a slightly damp paper towel and some Antique by Waverly stain to just kind of dirty the whole thing up. The distressed edges were not enough for me, so please be very, very careful, but I did take a lighter to just burn the edges a little bit. It gave it more of that kind of scorched look, and I really love how it came out, but again, please be very, very careful if you are handling an open flame. Next, I hot glued my paper down into place, and there was one little section on the back where some orange cone was peeking through, so I went in with my paintbrush to cover that up just so you didn't have the bright orange kind of sneaking through in the back. Now to make the brim of our witch's hat. Originally, I planned to go in with a black witch's brim. The Dollar Tree has a similar tool to this, but it's black with spider webs that are sparkly silver. But I pulled it out and the sparkles were getting everywhere and I just could not handle all of the glitter. And also, I really like the purple. It's a good contrast. I think maybe if I did the black brim of the hat, it might have gotten lost. So I did 2 layers of this, one underneath and one on top. I just used hot glue, but I'm kind of scrunching the tool together accordion style. I was thinking like a ballerina tutu, so kind of pinching it all together, and I really like the look that that gave. Next, I went in with my scissors and just trimmed it down a little bit because it was a tiny bit too long, and the top layer I did make a little bit shorter just so we had a little bit of layering happening. Next, I went in with some ribbon. Originally, I was going to go all the way around the brim of the hat, but I really liked the look of just one big giant bow in the front, so I applied that down with some hot glue. I couldn't completely escape the glitter though. I did add a little bit of these black branches. The Dollar Tree sells them in black, orange, and I believe purple. They're glittery picks, so I did hot glue a little bit of that down to add a small bit of a glittery embellishment to our witch's hat. Now that we've got our witch's hat, it's time to introduce the witch. Not the one who's going to wear that hat because she's quite a bit tinier. I wanted to do a witch DIY, and this girl is entirely made out of book pages, minus her hair and the witch hat that she is wearing, but her arms, her head, and her body are made out of book pages. How cool is that? So what do you need? Well, of course, you're going to need a book that you don't care about. The outside area, so the cover and the back, you're going to peel off of the binding. I didn't show it here because you're going to see a little bit of my own editing magic in a second when I show you it completed. You're going to take your page, fold it down like I am into a triangle, take the bottom one and fold it, and then fold it over itself again. And you're going to do this for the entire book. I would suggest not too long of a book. This one was about 200 pages. I put on a TV show while I did this, and an hour later, this is what I had, the skirt or body area of my witch. I think it looks so cool and it's so easy. It just does take a bit of time. Now for her cape, you're gonna fold your piece of paper, I think you call it hot dog style and then hamburger style. Then you're gonna go in with your scissors, and we're basically creating her cape right now. So you're gonna make this shape to cut the cape, leaving it long on the one side because that's gonna be the long billowing sleeves. Then on the ends, I just folded it back a little bit to be her cuffs, and then you fold it over itself. Then we've got to create her arms and her little hands. So you're going to take a piece of paper and fold it diagonally. So you're going to have this kind of asymmetrical shape here, and then just roll pretty much over and over, however thick you want her arms or hands to be. And then I used a bit of, I was going to say hot glue, but I did not for this one. I used a glue stick to just keep everything down. And all of that excess paper, don't worry about it. We're going to cut it off. So basically what you're left with is a straight line. But on the ends, you have that little diagonal piece of paper. So it kind of looks like hands. You could also just fold a piece of paper in half and make pretty much a straight line, and that would work too. But I like that her hands were the little diagonals. I thought it looked more like her hands are kind of being wrapped around underneath her cape. But if this is a little too complex for you, just cut a piece of paper and that could be your hands too. I did not use hot glue. I used the glue stick yet again to just keep everything adhered. So then what you're gonna do is tuck this inside of her cape. Now you can kind of see how this is going to start to shape out. And again, make sure you have the cuffs. If you don't want cuffs, then you just wouldn't fold this section. I placed her arms/hands inside of this and then folded it over. And that is her cape with her hands sticking out. I also suggest adding a bit more hot glue on the inside. I did go back and add that, but I forgot to film it. Next, you can choose whatever color paint you want her cape to be. For me, I just went with a simple black. And while that was drying, I moved on to making our witch's head/face. So I saw this idea on Pinterest. There are tons of creators and so many different ways that people have done it. Most of them, though, I saw used a large wood bead or a very small kind of snowball, a styrofoam ball. I didn't have any of those, so I just made a paper ball. So I squished up a bunch of pieces of paper and took one of the book pages and placed that around my squished up ball of paper and tied it at the bottom with some jute, of course, cutting off that excess. These witches hats come on black wood dowels. They're sold in a 3-pack at the Dollar Tree, and I went with this orange one for my witch's hat. My witch was pretty tall, so it's kind of hard to see it in frame, but I just used some hot glue to attach her head to her body. Also, completely off camera, you weren't able to see it, but I used Spanish moss, which you can find at the Dollar Tree, for my witch's hair. Last step is hot gluing on her cape. Put a little bit of hot glue on each side to keep everything in place. And there were a couple areas that I missed that a little bit of the book page was showing through, so I went in with a small detailing brush and just painted that area black. And finally, as an accessory, what is a witch without her broom? So I hot glued one in her hand. If Hocus Pocus has taught us anything, then we all know a witch is nothing without her trusty spell book. I've never made a spell book before. I looked through my old Halloween DIYs because it seemed to me like there was no way that I hadn't done it before, but I have not, so I'm very excited to bring you my first ever spellbook DIY. I'm of course going to have these printables linked down below. I got them from a blogger, so check it out down below so you can print them out yourself. To get the book to look like it has been worn and the pages are very well loved, I am taking a spray bottle with some water and just wetting down all of the corners of the pages, especially the sides, and I left that overnight to dry. The pages of the book I'm going to be covering up with our printable, so I cut that down to size, and to adhere it I used Mod Podge, and I like to use a paintbrush to apply my Mod Podge. However, in this case, since we were going for a very old, like centuries old spell book, I was not worried about wrinkles. In fact, I kind of wanted wrinkles. I thought the more the merrier, so I definitely liberally applied that Mod Podge down so the edges would get all crinkly, and the pages were looking way too new. You could have dipped these in some coffee beforehand, but I was going for the quicker route, so I just grabbed a damp cloth and some stain and put that all over. I also have some wax seals that I picked up from Temu, but I know Amazon sells them too. So I did place that down. It was originally gold and I changed it to red so it looked a little bit more like a wax seal. And in the Dollar Tree toy section, kind of on the boys' side, I found a packet full of snakes and frogs and other creepy crawlies, so I painted that silver to go with our book. I showed you how to make a witch, her hat, and even the spell book, so what is last? It's got to be the bubbling cauldron full of whatever kind of potion that we are making. And I actually have two versions that I'm going to show you. First up is this larger one that I've seen very popular on Pinterest and Instagram, and the second version is a little bit smaller, a little bit easier one using, of course, Dollar Tree supplies as always. First, I got this black bucket that said Beware at Dollar Tree, and I just covered up where it said Beware with some black paint. Then we're not going to fill the whole thing up with the clear ornament, so I stuffed down a bunch of tissue paper and then covered that in some cobwebs so you couldn't see it. The clear ornaments I did get off of Amazon, but I know Hobby Lobby has their Christmas stuff out already, so you can probably find it there. And the Dollar Tree also comes out with these, so you better believe I'm going to buy a whole packet of them and put them in my Halloween box so that next year I don't have to pay over $1.25 for them on Amazon. Then I'm just placing them all on top of my quote-unquote cauldron and hot gluing a couple of them so they look like they are stacking up on top of each other. Lastly, I'm adding in some twinkle lights. I get these off of Amazon. They're my favorite ones. And just kind of weaving those through my bubbling bubbles in my cauldron. And lastly, it's not a witch's cauldron if we don't have some creepy crawlies, so I added in some black spiders. And I liked the idea of adding a bow, making it a little bit less gothic, a little bit prettier and cute. I really like this autumny, it's almost like a goldy burnt orange color ribbon. So I tied that and put a big bow on the front. Now, if you're looking for a little bit smaller Dollar Tree version, I know in the previous one we did use a Dollar Tree bucket, but those ornaments, again, I got from Amazon. This is going to be a smaller one. I took one of the cauldrons that came in a 4-pack last year, but I think they're a 2-pack this year. And I painted it black and added some distressing with gray paint. Going back to that creepy crawly pack I picked up at the boys toy section, I took a snake and hot glued that to the outside of our cauldron and then went in with some metallic silver paint and coated the snake in that twice. This is where instead of those clear ornaments to act as bubbles, we are going to use some cobwebs. I also wrapped up the cobwebs in some spider lights that of course I got from the Dollar Tree and added some ring spiders to the top of that. The spider lights gave off a cool light, so I tucked down a tea light in the bottom of our cauldron to give that warm glow. The next DIY, we are entering deep into the Gothic realm. This reminds me of something that you would see on the wall in the Haunted Mansion ride. And don't worry if this is too scary for you. I promise this is the scariest one that I have in the video. So we'll get back to the other ones in just a second. But if you like this kind of Gothic decor, then this DIY is for you, and it is seriously so easy. I took a picture frame from the Dollar Tree, and I also grabbed one of the Dollar Tree skulls and Dollar Tree hands. So easy, all you have to do, hot glue your skeleton skull on, hot glue the arms on, and you are halfway done. Yes, it's really that simple. Also, something funny, I picked up 2 right hands, so yes, my skeleton does have 2 right hands, but I think that's okay because maybe it's, someone else's right hand. Who knows? I then grabbed some pantyhose that I picked up from the Dollar Tree also, and that's what's going to give it that cool effect where it really looks like the skeleton is coming out of a painting or coming out of a wall. I placed the pantyhose 1 layer over, and then I flipped it on the back. I did remove the picture holder because that was getting in the way, and I wanted to hang this on my wall, so didn't need it anyway. And to keep everything all together and didn't have lines of pantyhose coming across, I just used zip ties to secure in the back. You could also use hot glue, but pantyhose is so stretchy I would have had to use a lot of hot glue, so I just went with zip ties. For the leg sections of the pantyhose, I just double knotted that in the back and cut them off because we're going to be using one of the legs again. I decided to do 2 layers of the black pantyhose. I thought that gave a great look. It was opaque enough that you weren't able to see too much of the background, but you could still see the skull and the hands coming through. I zip tied that as well to the back. If you're going to have this on a mantle, then probably want to use black zip ties, but I'm just going to take down one of the pictures I have on my wall and replace it with this, so I didn't really care what the back looked like too much. And the final step, we want to make this look spooky and gothic and creepy, and what better way to do that with some good old Dollar Tree cobwebs. So I took those out and draped them all across our picture frame. If you watched my Halloween video last year, then you would know that I made a crystal ball, a fortune ball, out of Dollar Tree supplies. When I was at my local Target, I was checking out their dollar spot section, and I found this for $5. It's a glass, very nice quality crystal ball. So I decided to use this year to smoke it up and make it really look like I've been using it for a long time, perhaps centuries. I took a candle and then I went in with a lighter because my candle wasn't working quite fast enough, and this adds that smoky black look to the crystal ball, but please be very, very careful. It will also get very hot. So I did this over the course of 30 minutes, putting my lighter on different areas of my soon-to-be crystal ball, then letting it sit and cool down before picking it back up. The image that I'm cutting out, I got from a blogger who I was inspired to do this DIY from, and I printed it out on clear sticker paper, but she suggested that you use completely transparent paper, something if you remember when you were back in your school days when the teacher would bring out the projector and they'd have that transparent paper with the slides on it. But I didn't have any in Amazon. It was around $12, so I didn't want to purchase it just for one DIY. But if you have that around, that is going to be the perfect item. My sticker paper was a little bit cloudy, so you didn't get that perfectly transparent look, but hey, it's what I had. So I printed out my images. I will again have that link down below. The eye one was my favorite, so I cut that out and then put a bunch of twinkle lights inside of my crystal ball. And because this was sticker paper, it was of course very sticky. So I just stuck the eye image onto the lights and it appeared to be floating. I didn't scare you all too much with that skull DIY, so I'm here to make it up to you with this really adorable, spooky, cute one. And it's so easy, and I guarantee you have most of the items sitting around your house. We're gonna make this ghost jar. I made the very viral tomato cage ghost last year. I'll pop up a picture of that. And this one's even easier. I took an empty pickle jar and filled it with my fairy lights. Then I went over it with some of this creepy cloth from the Dollar Tree, and of course the white, and then I just cut out using some vinyl 2 eyes and a mouth for our ghosty. I did put a little pumpkin in between what kind of looked like the ghost hands to mimic that very viral Pottery Barn pillow, if you guys have seen that. But my puppy decided that he wanted to eat the pumpkin, so he completely shredded it, so that's why it's not in the final images. But I love this DIY. It's so quick and easy. Next up, I love a good classic sign, a fun way to DIY a Dollar Tree sign that already exists. I picked this one up and I really liked the original colors, but I wanted to go over the words. So pretty much I followed the black, white, purple vibe and just repainted it using some Waverly paints that I had. Also, I created the Transylvania Salem Sleepy Hollow on Cricut Design Space. I will have a link to this image and any other Cricut images that I used down below. So if you use Cricut, that is all ready for you. On the Sleepy Hollow portion, I took one of the witch's brooms that the Dollar Tree sells in a 3-pack and hot glued that down to the bottom and also put on a black bow. The original broom was a little bit too long for the sign, so I used my trusty dog nail trimmers that you can pick up at the Dollar Tree to size down the witch's broom. If you're new here, I love all things Disney. Haunted Mansion is my favorite ride and theme, but I had to pay a little bit of homage to Snow White and the classic poison apple. Last year, I started noticing that in the crafters store section, there was a new brand, I think it is, called Farmer's Square, where you can get a lot of fake produce, which I love because these can get a little bit pricey at Hobby Lobby if you don't get them on a deal. So I got the classic red apple, and I also picked up a green one. So I'm going to insert an image of what the apple looks like in Snow White, and I'm pretty much just copying that. For the nose, I did an upside down heart, and the eyes are pretty self-explanatory. Then for where the poison will drip down to, I just did some squiggle lines. Yes, very scientific there. Squiggle lines all around the apple. Next part is super easy. You're going to heat up your glue gun, and everywhere that you already placed down with your black pen, I used a Sharpie, you're going to outline in the hot glue and let that dry. I thought this was going to be a lot more complex and I would have to completely cover the apple in the hot glue, but I think you get a great effect by just using the hot glue in the areas that you have outlined your poison apple face. For the green apple, I used what I kind of would think poison would look like. I know poison probably is clear, but for me it was black, so I did it completely in black paint. And then for our red apple, I'm going classic Snow White here and doing the green poison. I also added a little bit of shading, so on the black apple I did some dry brushing with gray paint to just give it a little bit of dimension. And then once my green paint had dried on the red apple, it wasn't quite neon enough, toxic enough to kind of match the color of the Snow White one. So I went over it in a little bit of a brighter green. We already have our poison apples and our bubbling cauldron, but to complete our creepy apothecary, let's make some potion bottles. Also, if you see that bubbling cauldron kind of giving off that smoke, that's actually from the Dollar Tree. I've had it in pretty much every single DIY in the videos thus far. It was $5 in the dollar spot, and it basically works like an air diffuser. So you just put water in it and it diffuses that smoke, and I think it looks so cool. So definitely worth a visit to the Dollar Tree Plus section. I took one of the apple cider wood decor pieces and I'm going to transform it into our potion bottle by first taking a piece of this Halloween leather, cutting it out to size, and then gluing it down with some Mod Podge. Then I broke the first rule of YouTubing because I forgot to film. So this was me when I realized I didn't film any of the stuff that I had done on this. So I did have a crow's feet printable. I'll link it down below. I printed that out and adhered it with some Mod Podge to the front of what will be our potion bottle. And now I'm using a technique using Mod Podge and some gauze. You pull the gauze apart so it's really broken up and thin and stretchy, and I laid that down with a layer of Mod Podge. And then I made a concoction, my own potion really, using baking powder and Mod Podge, and I'm placing that over the top of everything. It really just gives that overflowed kind of puffy look to the potion bottle, so it looks like it's foaming, which I love. Because I had to rush through the technique on the last one, I'm going to show you again using these lab flasks. I did not see these last year, so I think they might be new, and they come 2 in a set. To fill them up, I put some soap in each, but before we do that, I thought they needed a little bit of decor on the front of them, so I got these rub-on transfers from, of course, the Dollar Tree. One actually is a little potion bottle, so I put that on it, and then one is a bat. I filled them both up with soap and then put a little bit of orange paint in one and a little bit of green paint in the other to dye it. Next, I'm going in with the same technique, laying down some Mod Podge and putting my pulled apart gauze on top, and then putting more Mod Podge on so it all stays in place. Then once I have my gauze adhered, I'm going in with that potion that I made, which is a mix, half Mod Podge, half baking powder, and really just dripping that all around our lab bottles. I will post above my video from last year. I did a very in-depth tutorial on how to create that concoction of the baking powder and Mod Podge, so I'll have that linked above if you want to check that one out. Then once everything is dried, and it does take a long time, especially those globs of the baking powder and Mod Podge, it'll take a few hours, so make sure it's completely dried. Then once it is, you can go in and paint it whatever color that you would like. I wanted to go for the very gothic look, so rather than having pinks or purples or, the fun colors of potion foaming out, I just went with black. And when you do cover everything with black, it can look a little bit one-dimensional, so just to make sure that you can can really see the bits of gauze that are in there and all of the drippies. I went in with a smaller brush and some gray paint to just highlight those areas. Keeping with our Gothic theme, we are going to create this skull mirror. This kind of reminded me of a DIY I made last year in my mega Halloween DIY video. I'll have that link down below, and in case you didn't catch it, I did a haunted mansion mirror, and I love using the mirrors from Dollar Tree. I think they can look really spooky and great for Halloween. I took one of the candlesticks, of course from Dollar Tree too, and I painted that completely black, as well as 3 of the little plastic skulls from the Dollar Tree. I also painted those black. To connect the mirror to the candlestick stand, I just placed down some hot glue. You're going to want to hold it in place until the glue is completely dry, just to make sure that it dries straight. Then I created my skulls. My first one, I had a larger plastic skull, and then 2 of the smaller skulls that I am putting off to the side were some white glittery styrofoam skulls, but I just painted those black. You can kind of see a little bit of the glitter coming through, but I actually liked that effect. I also made the frame a little bit more black with some paint. It had a lot of gold in it, and I just wanted the gold to peek through. And then I also created a shattered mirror effect using some vinyl, but you could use paint or even a Sharpie. This is another one of those quick and easy DIYs. If you don't have a lot of time on your hands, maybe you don't consider yourself too crafty, but you still want to get into that Halloween spirit. So we are going to be creating these spider cobweb candles. To do this, I am taking 2 different types of jars. This larger one is from the Dollar Tree, but the smaller one just contained a dessert from Costco. I am telling you, the Costco desserts that come in the glass jars, they are so great for crafting. But all you're gonna do is take some white yarn and wrap it all around the candle in no particular order or direction. We want it to look like a spider web, and you're just going to wrap that around and around. And then I was able to just tuck the yarn in the back, but if you can't, you can always hot glue it down into place. I could not find any of the black spider rings, only these reddish orange ones. So I just took some black paint to them to cover up their original red color. And then I just cut off the ring section before hot gluing them down onto my web. This is a great DIY to do with the kids because you don't have to use hot glue. You could just use some regular old liquid glue or even some tape. A Gothic DIY video is nothing if we don't include a cool skull. This is an upgrade on a usual skull because ours had a very fancy former life and is covered in some gorgeous jewels. This is a really fun DIY to do, and it requires only a couple of supplies. So the first one are these large foam skull heads. I think these are really great. I've always seen them at the Dollar Tree, but didn't really know what I was going to do with them. But I really liked the idea, kind of a sugar skull. That's where I got some of the inspiration, but really wanted to bedazzle it up. To do this, I grabbed one of the sticker sheets from the Crafter Square section of the Dollar Tree. It has all of these adhesive rhinestones in different sizes, and the color of the rhinestones doesn't matter because we are going to be covering that up with paint. So I just grabbed a bunch of the rhinestones and started having fun just placing them all over the skull. Originally, you could see I had one of those larger stickers that I had used previously on the potion bottles, but I wanted to keep everything pretty consistent, so I just covered the entire skull with some of these little gemstones. Then I went in with black paint, being careful to stipple over the rhinestones, and then to finish it off, I grabbed some of that metallic silver paint I used on the crystal ball and highlighted the gems, the eyes, and even a little bit of our skull's teeth. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, next Saturday, I'm going to have 13 brand new Halloween DIYs for you all to enjoy. Until then, keep searching, keep creating.